What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Face Off Sports Network with a Week 9 fantasy football NFL reaction with Pete Nova at Supernova 38. Remember to follow the show at the FF Face Off and at fffaceoff.com. Subscribe to the channel or wherever you are picking us up right now. We're live right now on multiple platforms: YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter. Pete, a lot to talk about today. What's going on?
Yeah, a lot to talk about. Excited to get into it. Let's just kind of roll. We did have that injury news with Dak Prescott. Looks like possibility with the hamstring that he misses, a couple weeks possibly even the season. You are a Cowboys fan, so why don't you give us your reaction, and then we can kind of shift over how it affects the rest of the pass catchers. We'll talk CeeDee Lamb, but why don't you talk about Dak, and do you think he's coming back, and how does it affect it, like CeeDee Lamb and Schultz and those guys?
It's shocking, but at the same time, from a fan point of view, from an NFL point of view, I think this is the best thing that happened to the Cowboys. They weren't going anywhere this season with the personnel they have. They don't look good, and without Dak Prescott under center, you're going to have Cooper Rush, who's a good backup. But when he was winning games a few years ago, the defense had the Dan Quinn defense. It was elite. And that was essentially winning games while Cooper Rush managed those games. They're going to lose a lot of games moving forward. They have a tough schedule upcoming. So this puts Dallas in a position to get a high draft pick and start rebuilding this roster. From a fantasy football point of view, this obviously hurts any Dak Prescott fantasy manager. He's been at least solid in fantasy this year. And it especially hurts his pass catchers, notably CeeDee Lamb, who's dealing with his own injury. So this is catastrophic, not only from an NFL point of view, but I think it's a blessing in disguise. But in fantasy, let's call it what it is. CeeDee Lamb wasn't giving us a CeeDee Lamb type of season anyway, and this just further tanks him.
Yeah. I mean, and we'll talk a little bit here. We'll talk CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill rest the season here, because I think it's something. They're two guys to, they're both having their own issues here. Tyreek had the quarterback issues to start the year, and how has gotten his quarterback back, and now you have CeeDee Lamb, who is kind of week to week with that shoulder injury and hasn't. It's been a little bit of an up and down year at times for Lamb, but all in all, I mean, he gets Cooper Rush as the quarterback. I mean, I'm trying to look at the statistics for CeeDee Lamb with Cooper Rush, and if I recall, I felt like he was peppered with targets, but it wasn't really. I mean, I'm looking at the 2022 game log, and it wasn't that bad for him.
But I think that Amari Cooper might have still been there too. During that season. So, and CeeDee Lamb didn't really break out yet, to my memory. I could be wrong, but I think that was the final year for Amari Cooper.
2022, yes, because Cooper was with the Browns in 23-24. Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I feel like Amari Cooper was with the Browns a little bit earlier than that. Let me take a look really quick. Yeah, I can't find it quick enough here. I'm trying to, but
So it looks like, Amari Cooper was with he was in Cleveland in 2022. Okay, so that's fair. So CeeDee Lamb was the guy in Dallas.
Yeah, I thought he was. I mean, I wasn't entirely sure. But I mean, yeah, Cooper Rush in 2022 at 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Not like he was not lighting the world on fire, and he's not really a good quarterback necessarily. But I mean, I think Lamb should be heavily targeted at least. Maybe it's just one of those things where Cooper Rush will lock on and just pretty much just pepper him with targets. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm excited about it. I'm definitely not. But I mean, let's just go back into the initial question here and dig into it a little bit more. You have Tyreek Hill, who, Tua Tagovailoa missed a bunch of games to start the year. Tua comes back for the last 2 weeks, and Tyreek Hill this week had 12 fantasy points. He had 5 targets, but he caught 4 catches for 80 yards. Tough Bills defense, 6 when it comes to points allowed to the wide receiver position. And, Achane is really the talking point here. We'll talk a little bit more about Achane later on in the show. But then you have, CeeDee Lamb, who, 8 catches, 47 yards, 12 targets. It's 17 targets, 14 the last 3 weeks. But again, the quarterback issues, but the schedule is pretty good for CeeDee Lamb. If you had to take one rest of season, are you taking Tua or are you taking CeeDee Lamb at this point?
You mean Tyreek or CeeDee Lamb?
Yeah. You're taking Tyreek or CeeDee Lamb.
The tough part here is what version of the Dallas offense are we going to get with Cooper Rush? I don't know if they're going to throw as much as they threw with Dak Prescott. And I know it's hard to say they're going to try to run more with Rico Dowdle and Dalvin Cook. Rico actually had a good game yesterday. Probably a lot of that as a receiver out of the backfield, but I think they're going to try to run more, scale this offense back. CeeDee Lamb should get his. I also like guys like Ferguson at tight end, obviously gets an uptick. I think some of these ancillary weapons like Jalen Tolbert and Brandon Cooks coming back. So there's going to be other weapons here. You would think in theory, CeeDee Lamb should be the guy, right? He's a number 1 receiver. He's a stud. He's going to see that same target share. I just don't know about that. And that's what really worries me, because it seems like these backup quarterbacks, they're either going to lock on to the stud or they're going to spread the ball around. Then when it comes to Tyreek Hill, we were expecting like anybody who rostered Tyreek Hill since the Tua injury, right? It was week 8. It was supposed to be the coming out party. This is what we held on to Tyreek Hill for. And Tua comes back. It's the DeVon Achane show. Tyreek Hill has been under 13 PPR points in the 2 games back with Tua, under 80 yards receiving. And 9 and 5 targets. Just 5 targets this week. This is alarming because Jonnu Smith out-targeted Tyreek Hill. And Jonnu Smith has been getting a larger role in this offense. So it's no longer just the Waddle and Tyreek show as receivers. We're getting Achane getting a large target share. We're seeing Jonnu Smith get involved. So both of these receivers who, depending on who you're drafting with, they're 2 of the top 3 picks in fantasy drafts. Rest of season, I'm really worried, but obviously I'm going to side with Tyreek Hill because he has his quarterback. And at least the past 2 games, if he scores a touchdown, this conversation isn't happening. He's at least getting the yards. And he's still the big play guy. And I just think that, we have CeeDee Lamb dealing with a minor injury right now. It's a sprained AC joint to his shoulder. They're considering him week to week. Tyreek is healthy. Give me Tyreek Hill. I think we'll get, that ceiling is still there for Tyreek Hill, where CeeDee Lamb, I don't know if we haven't really, we gotten that ceiling twice this year.
Yeah.
That's it. Every other game for CeeDee Lamb, he's gone 3 over 19 PPR points, everything else under 16. And these are games where he's getting 14 targets, 12 targets. And that's a great schedule. This offensive line's an issue. Philly, that's going to be a problem. Houston's going to be a problem. Washington's defense is ascending. That's going to be a problem. The Giants defense, the Giants took Dallas to the core when they played earlier this year. That defense is going to be a problem for Cooper Rush since he's getting better. The only good matchup is maybe Tampa and Carolina. So, yeah, on paper, it looks good. It looks great with Dak Prescott. It does not look good with Cooper Rush right now. So, give me Tyreek Hill.
I'm gonna take Tyreek Hill too to close out the segment, but I'll take Tyreek Hill. It's nothing against CeeDee Lamb, but Jalen Waddle's also hurt. Like, there's a chance he misses
Again?
some time. Yeah, he got well.
I know, I'm joking.
He got hurt, and who knows? I mean, the CeeDee Lamb, it's a shoulder injury. Like, wide receivers, they have to extend to catch the football. Like, that's not the easiest thing to play through. It is going to be painful, and he gets a downgrade quarterback. So I'm going to take Tyreek Hill as well rest of the season. Let's shift to our next topic here. It's going to be Jaxson Smith-Njigba. Jaxson Smith-Njigba, me and Anthony, we talked a lot about him on our show on Sunday. And, there were worries between the both of us, with DK Metcalf being out. Does it help? Does it hurt? And quite honestly, Jaxson Smith-Njigba showed up in a huge way. 37 fantasy points, 7 catches, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 13 targets. I mean, this guy, 13.8 yards per target. So he's getting the deep ball as well, not just the intermediate. And prior to that, the week before in Buffalo against a tough defense, who Tyreek Hill just struggled against, and Njigba had a decent day too. 6 catches, 69 yards, 12.9 fantasy points on 7 targets. He does get a bye this week. And then he gets San Francisco. So that gives DK Metcalf an extra week to rest and then come back. And, it's kind of one of those things like, is this the breakout for Jaxson Smith-Njigba that we were waiting for? And can he sustain that? Or, is it just, hey, kind of a flex option, borderline low end or wide receiver 2? To me, he's a flex option still. This was a great game. He ascended himself and he played well, but I am not ready to stick and say, hey, JSN's my wide receiver 2 in fantasy this year. Like, that's not making me excited, and it's nothing against him, but like, Tyler Lockett's still a factor there too. I mean, Tyler Lockett caught 3 catches, 63 yards on 4 targets. He didn't get peppered, but DK Metcalf's going to come back. He's been catching a lot of those deep balls, so I'm not ready to say Jaxson Smith-Njigba is a wide receiver 2 yet. He's still a flex for me. I don't know if that game changes your mind, Anthony. How do you see him rest the season at this point?
I was really high on Jaxson Smith-Njigba this offseason. And he hasn't exactly lived up to expectation. Now, if you look right now for the season, he's a wide receiver 14. But if you have a Jaxson Smith on your fantasy team, you're going to say, I lost a lot of games with Jaxson Smith-Njigba in my lineup because he's not really a wide receiver 14 because he's had 2 spike weeks of 23 and 37, which enhances where his finish. He's really the wide receiver 23. I'm a points per game guy and fantasy points per game. That makes him just qualifying as a wide receiver 2. And again, those 2 spike weeks do play a role. What Jaxson Smith-Njigba really is up to this point, he's a high floor wide receiver 3 in an offense without DK Metcalf. I was telling people on this show to sit JSM because I didn't trust Geno without DK Metcalf. And I don't think we should. If we actually look at Geno Smith, and Jim Coventry pointed this out on the RotoWire show, that a lot of his big games, yardage-wise, are coming in games where they lose, and he's really not scoring touchdowns. Like, no, yesterday is an outlier, 363 and 3 touchdowns. If you look at some of his other big yardage games, he's thrown 1 touchdown in them. He doesn't really look that good. And in the games that they are winning, Geno Smith doesn't have to do much because it's usually a Kenneth Walker game. So I think a lot of these numbers are very much inflated. Now, when it comes to what are we going to do with JSN moving forward, I'm not ready to crown him as a wide receiver 2 moving forward because he's now had 2 opportunities 2 weeks in a row. One, he pops. There was a lot of garbage time scenarios in that game against the Rams and against Buffalo, a solid high floor, 12.9 PPR points and 7 targets. If you're a true wide receiver 1, or if you're ascending, you're going to step up in the tough matchups, and we haven't really seen JSN do that yet. So rest of season, I think he can perform as a wide receiver too, but he's really just a wide receiver 3 or a high floor flex play for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, last thing to close it out. I mean, if you take what I like to do with wide receivers, usually with fantasy players in general, I take the big highest game and the lowest game. I remove them. And then I take the average from that. If you do that, he's really averaging somewhere around 13, 12 points a game. It's not bad. It's not great. It's average. Like that's the point here. It's a flex play. It's not really like, and when DK Metcalf comes back, look, I mean, he still has Chicago, who's 4th against wide receivers. He still gets the New York Jets. He still has a bye. So like those are 3 tough weeks. Bye, 4th defense, 1st defense, one of them being in the championship. So that'll close out that segment. Do you want to take a look here and see if we have any comments here?
Yeah.
Sauce Mon said, do I trade CeeDee Lamb because of the Dak news? Yeah, I mean, I'm okay trading CeeDee Lamb. It just matters. Like, I'm not taking a significant discount for him. Like, that's kind of just how I feel. If you can go to the Nico Collins owner, if maybe Nico Collins doesn't get activated this week and maybe they give him one more week and maybe you could dangle that to the owner that's maybe hurting, I would try to do that. I don't know if you'll get somebody to bite on that. But I'd be comfortable doing that. Maybe you can go trade CeeDee Lamb for Puka at this point. I mean, I don't think that's a crazy deal to make either. What do you think, Anthony?
I probably would trade CeeDee Lamb because on top of this injury, right? Like this injury, the sprained AC joint, it could linger. He's one hit away from a long-term or possibly season-ending injury because this team isn't going anywhere. They're 2 losses away from possibly like, all right, CeeDee Lamb gets one more injury, they're putting him on a shelf.
Yeah.
Same with Dak Prescott. I mean, that's the reality. I know Jerry will say, I'm going to be a buyer at the deadline. No, you're not. You're not a buyer at the deadline. If anything, you're going to be selling at the deadline. So this is going to be a lost season for Dallas. And, who knows what they do with these stud players that Jerry just invested a lot of money into long term. I don't think you want the, CeeDee Lamb tearing an ACL or worse, or Dak Prescott tearing an ACL in a season that's in a tank. So I would probably try to flip CeeDee Lamb and see what you can get. At least put a feeler out there. Maybe Neighbors. I've been saying it on this show that Neighbors is a sell for me, but I think I'd rather have, and the reason why is because I worry about his ceiling with this offensive line situation, right? The Giants offense takes a step back, and this is a player. Let's be real here. Back-to-back games, he's had 11 and 13 targets and under 14 PPR points. Why? Because Daniel Jones doesn't have time to throw and play like the quarterback that was feeding Neighbors earlier this season. He was giving us 28, 28, 23. I don't know if that's there, but I still feel more comfortable with Malik Neighbors down the stretch than CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. Some news, Jalen McMillan is not going to play tonight. So he's out. So, I mean, Kate Otten, maybe even, Sterling Shepard props. Like if you're betting, like those might be some guys to target. I don't even know. I mean, the news just came down. So if you are a sports bettor, you might be able to catch some low lines on some of those guys. I would take a look at even maybe a sneaky play would be like a Trey Palmer. I mean, I'm trying to think of who else they have.
Kate Otten's going to get 14 million targets tonight. Like
he could. Oh, what about Raheem Jarrett?
I mean, we don't know who he is, so why not? I mean, I don't think his line's going to be that high, right? He's a wide receiver. I know that.
They don't even have. They only have Bucky Irving, Rashad White's receiving yards right now. They're adjusting. So, all right. Out of Rhythm said he would take Leggett over JSN. Zach Linton said Raheem Jarrett as well. And then let's see, Jared Fortin's here. I want to get to Bernardo after that. He said, bad running back. Would you deal Jefferson and ETN for Aaron Jones or James Cook and Cup PPR and redraft? I wouldn't. I mean, I want to hang on to ETN at this point, just see what happens. And I mean, it's just not it's not enough.
I'm not trading Justin Jefferson for
Ever.
anything right now.
Yeah. Bernardo Rodriguez, this is an interesting one. He said, need a running back relatively easy to trade with good matchups. So who do you recommend Tyrone Tracy or anyone? I mean, David Montgomery is running back 16. Guys like him, you could trade for the Tony Pollard, who's been extremely consistent all year. He's only running back 19, but like outside of 2 weeks, he scored 11 and 12 or more fantasy points every week this year. He's had his bye. I don't have their schedules up in front of me, but DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, Tony Pollard, even Aaron Jones, all four of those guys would be guys I'd be comfortable trying to trade for low. Maybe Najee Harris, but I think that owner probably has a chub for him at this point with 3 straight games of 100 yards. So those would be the 4 guys I would target. I don't have their schedules in front of me, but I think those are guys that like you may even be able to squeeze out a James Conner from somebody who, again, people just love to hate James Conner. So.
Pollard, I'm on with you on Pollard. He really should have. He's had a couple of touchdowns called back, especially this week against New England. He had one call back, and I think one other one in memory because I take his touchdown props here and there. But rest of season, he has a couple of tough ones upcoming against the Chargers in Minnesota and Houston. And then it opens up, Washington, they're going to be a hit or miss. And weeks 14 to 17, Jacksonville, Cincy, Indy, and Jacksonville again in the fantasy championship. I love Tony Pollard rest of season, and he played through a foot injury. So he's proving to be extremely durable. And again, he is the entire offense right now for the Tennessee Titans. Not only as a runner, but he's also getting 13.3% of the team targets and 19.3 touches per game. So Pollard. And what about Ramondre Stevenson? Ramondre Stevenson, the past 2 games, over 20 PPR points. He's done that 3 times, and he's been over 19 fantasy points 4 times this season in PPR. With Drake May, I think, Ramondre Stevenson has a little bit more of inflated value because Drake May is a better quarterback. He has a threat of a run. He'll throw the football. And again, the rest of the season schedule, I think, is a little bit more promising than Pollard's outside of the fantasy championship where he gets the Chargers. Every other game, Chicago, I mean, look what the Cardinals did to that Bears run defense. The Rams, Miami, Indy, Cardinals, and Buffalo. This is a favorable schedule. So, and I think Ram will be a little bit cheaper than Pollard.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you there. Let's get to 1 or 2 questions here, and then we'll jump into our next segment. PJ Hatcher and as well as Zaire said, who are some good waiver wire pickups for week 10? There aren't many, but why don't we jump into our next segment, because it is one of our waiver wire guys that we are targeting right now.
And by the way, I'll be putting out a waiver video tomorrow early around 10 a.m. Eastern. So check it out. Subscribe if you're not, and look out for it.
Yeah, and you guys are on Twitch. Feel free to come over on YouTube. It helps us out immensely. But yeah, Ray Davis is
second time you combined the words.
I know. Ray Davis is going to be one of my waiver wire priorities, or one of our waiver wire priorities. He's just been stacking some good weeks together. It's not like James Cook is going away, but 17 PPR points this week for Ray Davis. And this is a guy that, Anthony and myself, Anthony a little bit more than me, we're very high on in the process this offseason. We both had a decent amount of shares, especially in best ball. But last week, 4 carries, 20 yards, but 2 catches for 70 and a touchdown, 2 targets. Week before that, just 2.9 fantasy points. And then the week before that, 11 on 12 snaps, 5 attempts, 41 yards. The main thing with him is just, the snap count is not there as much as we would like it to be. Let's just be completely honest. That's just the reality. But James Cook already suffered a foot injury this year. This is not a robust week for waiver wire pickups. We can both agree on that. But Ray Davis is a good stash. It seems like he's came up big and he's seized his opportunities. And I think this coaching staff is going to give him more opportunities as the season goes on. So he's a great stash. I'm not saying start Ray Davis this week if you pick him up. There's not many guys you're going to be able to pick up this week and start on the waiver wire, especially in 12-man or higher leagues. But Ray Davis is a good pickup in waivers this week for me.
Yeah, I absolutely. I was all in on Ray Davis, and I thought it'd be cutting into the Cook workload a little bit more. It hasn't happened. Cook's having one of the best seasons of his career, but we're starting to see Ray Davis come on a little bit. 3 out of his past 4 games, double-digit PPR points, including 2 over 17. Now, outside of Week 6 against the Jets, where Ray Davis was a featured component of the offense with 23 touches, he's not getting any volume. He's not playing a lot of snaps, but he's making the most out of his opportunities in the 2 games in Week 7 and 9 on limited touches. He is finding the end zone, including yesterday, where he totals 90 yards on 6 touches, including that big touchdown catch and run. I'm not saying like what Pete's saying, like you can't use him. You can't look at these past 3 out of past 4 games and say, okay, I'm going to start him and hopefully I get lucky and he scores, because it doesn't make sense. He's not getting enough volume. And in fact, he's being out-snapped right now by Ty Johnson. He only played 8 snaps this week, but he touched the ball on 6 of them. We're not trying to bank on that for fantasy. But if James Cook goes down again, or if we look ahead, Buffalo, they're kind of in cruise control in the AFC East. They want to preserve James Cook for the playoffs. Maybe they do taper down James Cook's workload and turn Ray Davis up. So if you're looking at it, he's one of the bigger stashes on the market right now.
Yeah, and we do have a question, and it's in regards to this. I think it's a good question. Would you drop Jordan Mason for Ray Davis in fantasy at this point? I would. I'm comfortable and okay to say that. I think Isaac Guerendo, even if CMC does go down, I think Guerendo earned more time, and Mason has struggled to stay healthy. Ray Davis, outside of him, I mean, Ty Johnson's, but we saw what happened when James Cook missed time. Ray Davis was the guy. So I would prefer Ray Davis at this point.
Yeah. And I think I'm with you, right? CMC's coming back. Guerendo does look good. And I feel like we've seen this from the 49ers in the past, like before they had CMC, and it was like more of a running back stable where they, unless they have that elite player like CMC, they will, okay, Mason, you've been good all year, but you're getting hurt and Guerendo looks good. So we're going to turn to him. So Guerendo might be the priority handcuff moving forward for all we know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you there. We do have a question, then we'll get into our next segment here. 3P1C said Superflex League QBs are Burrow, Daniels, Russ, Wilson, Flacco, Tyreek Tillman, Deontay Coker. Someone offered me downs for my Russell Wilson. Would you do this? I gotta think this is dynasty. I mean, he's got Burrow, Daniels. I mean, if it's dynasty, then yes, I'm fine with it. I think it's fair. I think it's absolutely fair. Josh Downs is in year 2. He's played good this year. Didn't have as great of a game last night as we all hoped he would. Still 12 PPR points, 6 catches, 60 yards. And the crazy thing about Josh Downs, he played the least amount of snaps between Pierce and Michael Pittman, only 20, and he was targeted 9 times on 20 routes.
Wow.
On 20 snaps. I don't even know if it was 20 routes. So I'm good with it. I don't know how you feel, Anthony, but I think it's a fine trade.
I think, if it's dynasty, that does matter, because if it's not dynasty and I'm thinking rest of season, there's no guarantee Joe Flacco's a starter, right? After last night, Joe Flacco showed his age. I don't think there's a guarantee lock that he's a starter.
But they did come out today and say that he was the starter rest of the season.
All right.
His receivers are a little shaky. That's all. I mean, Tyreek Tillman are great, but then Deontay and Coker is his receiver 3 and 4.
I just hate to move Russ, and then Burrow. He has injury volatility. So does I want to make sure you're not, setting yourself back.
Sure.
At quarterback, but I do think the value's there. Like I'd rather have Josh down.
He said it's redraft.
Yeah, that makes it a little bit tougher. But I guess if you want that stability at wide receiver, if that's all you have is those 4 wide receivers, I think you have to make the deal.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what Deontay's role is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's kind of my
Coker,
worry
like
too.
Adam Thielen's coming back. I think that's going to put a
I think Thielen's
dagger into
gonna get traded.
Coker.
I think he's gonna get traded. I think he'll get traded. But we don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
What we do know is Deontay Johnson's a Raven and he's not a Panther, and we have no idea what his week to week stability is going to be. All right, let's move on to our next segment, and we have a couple other questions. But I one of the questions is from Albert, and he said, Quinten Johnson, what do you guys think about him as a waiver wire? Albert, friend of the show, very sharp guy. He knows exactly what we're thinking. Quinten Johnson was one of our waiver wire priorities for this week. Quinten Johnson coming off an awesome game, 22 fantasy points, 4 catches, 118 yards, and a touchdown on 5 targets. His yards per target was 23.8. And Quinten Johnson has had some of his big games. He's had some stinkers too. But this is an offense with, Ladd McConkey and Justin Herbert in general, like, has just looked better. Like, it looks like things are clicking a little bit. And we talked about this in the offseason, Anthony. We said, at least I know I said, my worry about Justin Herbert in the beginning of the season was he's dealing with a foot injury. He's got new receivers around him, and it's a new offense. Like, it could take him time to end up playing well. And we're starting to see him start to learn that offense more and that offense start to play better. Quinten Johnson is definitely a priority add this week, and it's a thin waiver wire this week. So yeah, Quinten Johnson should be one of your priorities. Talk a little bit more about that, Anthony, as well.
Yeah, Quinten Johnson had his second spike week of the year. Now, you remember, he also missed 2 games. So he played in 6 games, 3 over 12 PPR points, then 2. He had exactly 22 and 22.1. In both of those games, he scores a touchdown. Last week, he brought the yards. He's actually scored 3 touchdown, or I'm sorry, the 3 games where he went for double-digit PPR points, he's finding the end zone. My big issue with him is lack of volume. Outside of 1 game, he's gone under 5 targets. So he really is the new Mike Williams, which means to me he's the big play guy. He's the field stretcher, and that has volume in an offense like this that runs the football, and there's a threat of the play action pass, and somebody like Quinten Johnson, he gets loose. So yeah, we're going to pick him up. We're going to be heading into a little bit more bye weeks. This week especially, it was drastic when it comes to wide receiver injuries. And all of a sudden, Quinten Johnson, who might be a player I'm not willing to start, I might have to start him because we don't know what's going on with Lamb, Olave, A.J. Brown. There's been a lot of wide receiver injuries this season and especially this week. So, yeah, when you can get a guy who can potentially hang over 20 PPR points on a defense at any time, we got to pick him up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there.
And just to add, when it comes, he's being targeted. Now, this is a low volume passing attack. He's still being targeted on 25.7% of the routes he is running. So, again, it's another guy, when he's on the field, the usage is there.
Yeah. And look, for what it's worth, I mean, talented receiver, first round guy. Like, this is 1 year removed from being drafted in the first round. I'm not the biggest Quinten Johnson fan. Everybody on this show knows I'm not the biggest believer. But we are also of the mindset that you need to pivot off of your takes as we learn more data. And I think he's a fine addition for waivers this week. Let's check the chat and see. Lex Plant said Trey Palmer or Sterling Shepard tonight in PPR. My heart says Shepard. I mean, even before all these injuries, Shepard, had, and he was questionable coming into this game, but he hasn't been ruled out, so I'm assuming he's playing. But I mean, 5, 4, 5 targets. Those were his highs this year. I don't know. Something tells me Sterling Shepard would be better, but I mean, I don't love either guy. Quite honestly, I mean, I don't love either guy. I don't know how you feel. Raheem Jarrett might just end up freaking coming in and and just having a monster day all of a sudden. What do you think?
Obviously with McMillan being out, there's going to be extended opportunity for somebody. Sterling Shepard, the reason why he's in Tampa, if you followed the story, he was going to retire. And
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield actually called and delayed Sterling Shepard's retirement. Baker Mayfield wanted Sterling Shepard there. And there's going to be some opportunity here, right? He's not getting a ton of volume whatsoever, but things could open up. Last week against Atlanta, he did have 5 targets, only 3 for 18. But what happens now with no McMillan? Is there extended target opportunity going in his direction? Trey Palmer, he looked like he could have been a thing because he was leading in snaps, but he's only had a total of 5 targets in the past 2 games. So if I'm going to bank on anybody, it's probably going to be Sterling Shepard, because it seems like the usage, right? He played 57 snaps in week 7 when we saw the 2 injuries to Evans and Godwin. He had 3 targets. I think McMillan had 8 that game. And then last week against Atlanta, 49 snaps, 2 targets. So whatever reason, I don't think there's a connection there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. To me, I'm just gonna lean. I'm gonna lean Sterling Shepard. I mean, your back's against the wall tonight either way. So good luck with that. I mean, it's not a great situation either way. So prayers to you. Honest to God, I would even consider Justin Watson. From the Chiefs. I mean, he has a connection with Mahomes, and crazy enough, I mean, like, people laughed, but like, I mean, Mahomes likes this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not excited to start Justin Watson either. But I mean, he played 52 offensive snaps last week, 48 the week before, 57, 40 in the last 4 weeks. He's played 40% of the snaps. He's not getting high target volume. He's a good blocker, but I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know. I mean, they're going up against a bad pass defense in Tampa.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you heard it first. Justin Watson, big game. It's probably not going to happen. Am I crazy or I don't know.
I like if it wasn't for Worthy, Hopkins, and Kelsey, like Tampa's 27 against tight ends. Like there's a chance, like if we're waiting for this, if the pop game doesn't happen for this offense now, it is never happening this year. And the Chiefs might just go undefeated and win the Super Bowl with running the football, Kareem Hunt, and playing good defense. Like this is the game where Patrick Mahomes should, in theory, throw for 300 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, and just hang points. Because this Tampa defense, their secondary, it is terrible. Like Kirk Cousins, 8 or 9 touchdowns and 900 yards in 2 games.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, if not this week, then when? But I all jokes aside, I think Sterling Shepard, I think we both agree, is probably the guy.
Yeah.
Misfit said, at this time, should I drop Kraft for Gesicki? I think it's more interesting to see what happens with T. Higgins. I don't know if T. Higgins is going to get traded. If T. Higgins does get traded, I think, I would rather Gesicki rest the season, because Anthony brought up a good point on Sunday. Like, it seems like every game that T. Higgins isn't there, Mike Gesicki tends to not fill his role completely, because they do different things on the field. But, so I'm okay with making that move only if Higgins is gone. I'm going to stick with Tucker Kraft the rest of the season over Gesicki if Higgins is there, but I would just keep an eye on what happens in Cincy.
Yeah, I'm not like Kraft's been really good and reliable despite low volume. And if you look at the game, I went over this on Sunday, I think, even in week 1 against New England with Higgins out, Gesicki had a touchdown call back. He pops in week 2. And in the past 2 games without Higgins, we're seeing the best version of Mike Gesicki. So I think as long as Higgins is out, we can rely on Gesicki. He doesn't play a lot of snaps. Drew Sample played 54 snaps this week. Eric All, 15. I think All might be hurt now for the year. And Gesicki played 26. Tanner Hudson, 20. Like all 4 tight ends are getting an extended run of snaps. The reason why Gesicki's on the field more is the reason why he was shipped out of Miami is because he can't block.
Well, so keep in mind, and I don't know if you saw this, but All is done for the year.
Yeah. I thought I said I think he's done for the year.
Yeah. Sorry. I was looking through the comments here. I just wanted to make sure you had noted that. All right, we're gonna jump to our next segment, but before we do that, I want to pull this up. Juju is done. Yeah, Juju's not playing today. And then there was two other questions. Let's just answer one of them, and then we'll move on. And then I'll get to you, Hustle Kings, once we're done with this one. 3P said, "Is it worth picking up Garendo before kickoff starts? More unsure now. Hearing CMC back at practice. Haven't seen any Mason updates." I mean, if Garendo's available, like I think it's fine picking him up. I don't hate it. Like we said, I mean, if CMC, I think CMC's back this week. I think he's back. But if there's an injury, I do think Garendo has earned himself playing time. And it's more of a split role with Mason back.
And we also don't know if CMC is going to get a full complement. Is he going to get 25 touches a game? With all, this is multiple lower body injuries, right? Like I said, with the 49ers, like this isn't a 7-2 team. They are losing football games. And if CMC was actually healthy, he would have been back a long time ago. So this is something, a legitimate injury, and they could say he's healthy and he's good to go. We don't know that for sure until he's in live football, situations. And let's say he plays a game or two, doesn't look like himself. Garendo could have a role. So yeah, I would pick him up.
Cool. We are going to get to you. Oh, Misfit just sent us another super chat. We appreciate that. He said, dealing with a bye for Kraft. Okay. So that makes sense. I mean, he is on a bye this week. He said, for Kraft, and I need upside. I started love JT, Achane, AJ Brown, Olave this week and still won it somehow. Thank you, Achane. Yeah, we're going to talk Achane a little bit, but, yeah, I mean, I'm okay picking up Jazeki and dropping Kraft if you're in a must win and he's got a bye and you have nobody else to move. I think it's fine. I'd like to keep Kraft if possible, but I understand the move. And I think it's fair. I would also say, look, Zach Ertz, we bring him up all the time and nobody wants him, but he's been consistent. I'm trying to see what he did this week, but actually, bad week for him, 1.5 fantasy points. But he's been consistent outside of that. I mean, I'm fine picking up Jazeki and dropping Kraft if you need to win this week.
I'm the biggest Gesicki guy here. He played high school 20 minutes north of me. Like I think he's a great tight end. I don't trust him with T. Higgins on the field. Maybe pick him up, and then if you need a pivot, obviously we're here all week. Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith has had 6 targets in 4 straight games. In the past 2 games with 2 was 6 targets. So he's a high floor player, and they get the Rams, which is a good matchup for tight ends if you're in a bind.
Hey, how many touchdowns does Jonnu Smith have this year? Just one?
One.
Fuck. My pizza bet with Steve. I think I bet over 4. So, all right, let's move on.
I mean, for what it's worth, like nobody was scoring touchdowns for a while.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Let me grab Hustle Kings just because he did send a super chat in when we closed out the other day and we weren't able to get to him. So I don't want to keep him waiting. Literally as the video ended, he sent in the super chat. I said, would you guys drop Shakir for Mitchell or Tillman? I would
Keaton Mitchell.
I don't think it's Adonai.
It's got to be Keaton because he's expected to come back from IR.
Yeah, I don't care about Keaton Mitchell. I'm sorry. Justice Hill just got extended. He's the third down back. Keaton Mitchell will have some pop plays. He might have some weeks when he comes back where he scores 15 points and it's off of like one big run. But you're never going to be able to start him with confidence. Tillman, there's an argument to be made there. Another great week for Tillman. He's got a really tough schedule coming up, and Shakir has a really awesome schedule coming up. I would try to see if there's somebody else you could drop than Shakir, because I really like Shakir's schedule the next few weeks. So I want to hold Shakir.
Yeah, I would also hold, and I like Tillman a lot. Like the fact that he did what he did against the Chargers this week, 19 and a half PPR points. This is now that I'm really looking to these numbers, it's hard to not drop Shakir for him. And I like Shakir as much as you do. But he's had 31 total targets.
He said Quinten Mitchell. I'm trying. Maybe he means Quinten Johnson.
Oh,
or Keaton. He probably means Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah,
he probably means Keaton Mitchell. Yeah.
I might do this. I might drop Shakir for the. I mean, there's just so much volume here, and the schedule isn't great. But like, what this is what I said on Sunday when we were talking about this matchup against the Chargers. They can't cover everybody, and
Yeah.
when you're getting like this much volume, right? Double
Yeah.
digit targets, 9 targets, and he's good enough, big bodied receiver to come down with the football. Like, I might do this deal if you need, because I think he gives you a little bit higher of a floor than Shakir, and he also brings a ceiling to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I would be curious to know who else he has. Yeah, he said Chargers wide receiver, so he meant Quinten Johnson. I wouldn't drop Shakir for Quinten Johnson.
No, I would rather have Tillman over Quinten.
Oh, in a million years. Hustle Kings, why don't you send us your roster? Let's see if we can help you out. Send us your bench. I'd be curious to see if there's anybody else. We do have a couple other super chats that just flew in here. Misfit came in again with another super chat. He said, "Sorry, boys. I know y'all are trying to run through your segments. I could drop Jonathan Brooks or Rashad White for a tight end. No.
I think Kraft's got to be the guy then.
Yeah, Kraft becomes expendable for sure if that's your situation.
And Pete, this is something you like to do. Why don't you try? You can flip one of those running backs for an upgrade at tight end.
Yeah, I mean, I was wrong last week. This is the week officially for Jonathan Brooks. If he doesn't get activated, I think he's done for the year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if he gets activated, depends what your running backs look like. But yeah, no, I mean, you're not dropping Rashad White and you're not dropping Brooks.
Yeah.
You're dropping Tucker Kraft. Tight ends are a dime a dozen, especially ones that aren't elite. Our buddy Vic said, impossible question, up 7. Thank you for the super chat, Vic. He said, up 7. He has Hunt. I had McMillan. Who do I roll with? Watson, Shepard, Trey Palmer, Hardman, Tucker, P. Ryan. Oh, God.
Who's Tucker?
Sean Tucker.
Oh.
Not starting Sean Tucker against this defense.
It's Shepard or P. Ryan. I think Tampa gives up a ton of yards to the running back out of the backfield, which does make P. Ryan appetizing, but
appetizing.
Yeah, we answered Shepard earlier. I feel like it's Shepard or P. Ryan for me, and I lean Shepard.
I lean Shepard too. I mean, I'm looking here really quick. I mean, P. Ryan snap counts 15, 22. I mean, he might score tonight. It really wouldn't shock me. But give me Sterling Shepard. Give me Sterling.
Shepard's at least getting snaps.
Yeah,
I think since in the past 2 games he's getting, or in the past, that's Shepard here. Even when the other receivers were healthy, he's played at 47 plus snaps in 3 different games this year. So he's on the field.
Yeah.
I don't. There's not a lot to go off of here, Vic. Like I wish we had something else to give you, but
yeah, I mean, he's got Hunt. Hunt is like minus 200 to score tonight. Like, I mean, you go Sterling Shepard. Just go Sterling Shepard. And I don't think you're going to lose sleep because you're like, I can't believe I didn't start McCole Hardman tonight. Like, if McCole Hardman
there's so many
won you your week, like, you just chalk it up to like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, how could you possibly know? It's tough. It's Shepard.
Yeah.
And we probably will be wrong. It'll probably be Justin Watson.
Remember the last time we had a question like this? I said Mac Hollins and he hit.
Yeah, I remember that.
So like that's just it's luck.
It is. I'd
rather be lucky than good sometimes. But yeah, I would go Shepard because he's going to be on the field. There's no McMillan, and there's a good chance he gets he gets some targets because of a connection with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. All right, let's move to our last segment here. It's going to be DeVon Achane. Is DeVon Achane a top 5 running back rest of season? Last 2 weeks, 26.7 fantasy points. This week, 32.1. He did get Buffalo, which is 31st against the running back position. He's got some advantageous matchups. He's got, the Rams. He's got Las Vegas. He's got New England. He's got the Green Bay the next 4 weeks. He might go on an absolute tear. After that, he gets the Jets. He gets Houston, and then he gets San Fran, Cleveland. Schedule tightens up a little bit towards the playoffs. I'm ready to say he is probably should be considered a top 5 running back rest of season. You want to talk about CeeDee Lamb? I would, if the Achane owner is comfortable, I would trade CeeDee Lamb for Achane if you need the running back and you have help at wide receiver. He had 8 catches for 58 yards last week, 6 catches for 50 this week. The week before. I mean, he's just been great. I mean, he's getting 15% of the team targets, and he's splitting time with Mostert, and he's still getting 15% of the team's targets. So I'm comfortable with it. Anthony, I know this is one of your guys before the season started. Are you back on him at this point?
I never really came off of him. The only issue I had with him was the offense was just, running in place without Tua. But if we look at Achane in the 4 games Tua played, remember he played X amount of games against the Bills in week 2. He's had at least 7 targets. So he had 7 targets in the first 2 games with Tua, 8 targets the past 2 games with Tua. And every single one of those games, he's had at least 23 fantasy points. If we look at Tyreek Hill, right, he's getting the yards. He's not really getting the volume. Same thing with Waddle. We're seeing Jaxon Smith involved. It seems like that this offense this season is running through DeVon Achane, right or wrong, over Tyreek Hill. And this past week especially, Achane played 41 snaps to Raheem Mostert's 14, where last week and the week before it was 39-23, 37-30. This past week, 41-14. They are starting to trust DeVon Achane. He's younger. He has the speed. He can break a play open. He's a weapon out of the backfield. And now they're even using him as a weapon in the red zone and around the inside the 10 and 5. So I think DeVon Achane rest of season, if you need a running back upgrade, I want DeVon Achane almost over, maybe outside of maybe Barkley and Derrick Henry. I'll take DeVon Achane over everybody else, including CMC.
Wow. I mean, yeah, I think until we see it with CMC, it's fair to say that. But yeah, I don't think it's that bold. Totally fine with it, and I'm in agreement with you. Hustle Kings came back with another super chat. Said, I put my team in the chat. Please rate. So this was the question about Tucker Kraft, and does he drop Tucker Kraft? Right. This was, do I drop? Oh, no. Wait. Let me just scroll back up. I just want to make sure. He said I could drop Jonathan Brooks and Rachaad White for a tight end. And this was the question of he's dealing with Kraft on a bye and needs upside. He has Jake Ferguson. Now Ferguson gets Philly. Obviously, he gets the quarterback downgrade. I think because you have Ferguson, you're more than you're fine dropping Tucker Kraft if you have Ferguson. Do I prefer Kraft or Ferguson rest of the season? I mean, I think they might be close. But I'm not losing sleep over dropping Kraft if you need a tight end this week. But Ferguson is not on a bye. I mean, you could probably fire him up and just roll the dice. It depends on who else is out there. But his rest of his team is Josh Allen, St. Brown. He's got Zay Flowers, James Cook, Chase Brown, Kittle, Rico, Brian Thomas. Here, let me flash it. Brian Thomas Jr., Rachaad White, Shakir, Jared Goff, Deontay Johnson, and Brooks. I mean, it's a pretty good team. I think wide receiver, you're hurting a little bit. It could be a little better. I mean, well, he's got St. Brown. I almost forgot that. No, I think you're in a good spot. Honestly, I think I don't know how you feel, Anthony, but I think you could drop Tucker Kraft. You have Ferguson. like and stream a tight end and
Yeah.
maybe go try to get Gesicki in case T Higgins gets traded.
Yeah, I agree. And again, if Gesicki doesn't work out, you can always stream the tight end. Plus, if you said you have Ferguson,
Yeah, he's got Ferguson.
then I think Ferguson's value is going to be fine with or without Dak Prescott.
Yeah, yeah,
And your team's pretty loaded. Like, I'm not going to drop anybody on your roster right now to pick up a tight end.
yeah. I'm with you. We got about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna hit the 1 hour mark. And
I
then
just want to
go
say,
ahead.
DeVon Achane in the 4 games with Tua, and granted, I know he only played a quarter or a half. That he's averaging 27.5 fantasy points per game, which would make him the RB1 in that category.
Yeah, I mean, the dude's good.
I wish I said that in the clip, but I had to figure that out.
That's all right.
That's insane. I mean, this is the guy that we thought we were getting. It just, that little threat of Tua, and okay, well, he has all these guys to work with. DeVon Achane is killing it.
Yeah. Do you think that Pacheco would have been better than Achane if he stayed healthy? Remember, we had that whole discussion, but health was the concern, and ironically, Pacheco was the one that got injured and not Achane.
Yeah.
All right, we got about 5 minutes. Just want to run through a couple questions real quick for you guys before we head out of here. Let me take a look and see what we have. All right, TZ. I'm just gonna call you TZ. Hello, Arby's are Mixon, JT, Connor, Jacobs. Wide receivers are Nico, Garrett Wilson, BTJ. Would you trade Mixon for CeeDee Lamb full PPR? No.
Mixon is he's on a competitive team, and that team is way too dependent on Joe Mixon right now to win football games.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. What else? Trone has been waiting for a while. What's up, Trone? He said, I was considering trading JSN or D-Hop, but no longer sure with JSN's huge game. Do you think JSN's role will expand when DK comes back? I would want to hold on to JSN just to see what happens. I don't think this is the kind of, we can't rely on this. Like me and Anthony said before, I think JSN's probably a flex play. You're probably getting 10 to 12 points from him on average every week, maybe a spike game left this year. But I mean, honestly, I think it's worth trading him if you can get something good for him. If somebody's is that high on him, I mean, I don't know how you feel, Anthony, but I mean, he's on a bye this week, so you might not be able to get anything good.
The question was, what do I think his role will expand?
Yeah,
is it crazy? And I get he didn't play this week. Jaxson Smith-Njigba and DK Metcalf going into this week, they both had an exact 20.9% target share.
It's never been target share with him, though.
I'm just saying, but that an expanded role, it means expanded opportunity. The opportunity is equal.
In there. Yeah. The problem has been Kenneth Walker scores the touchdowns in the red zone. If it's not him, it's DK Metcalf as the big target, and Lockett too. Lockett scores touchdowns. JSN, he's not really scoring a lot outside of that last week, and DK gets the big plays. I mean, that's what it is.
This is crazy. The more I look at these two head to head, DK has 3 touchdowns. JSN has 3 touchdowns. DK has 2 spike weeks. JSN has 2 spike weeks.
I know.
That's insane.
He looked good against the Falcons and then got hurt. He left early. Yeah.
Wow.
DK has relied on the big plays. I think that's the big thing. He's got a lot of yards. Look at DK's yards. It's the yards and the big plays. He hasn't always gotten into the end zone, but it's like he's ripped off these big catches. And how many weeks does he have with 100 yards?
DK, he has 3, and then he has 1 with 99.
Right. So let's just call it 4. One game he left early that looked like he was going to have a monster day against the Falcons. And then he only played 8 weeks and really 7.5. And in 4 of them, he had 99 or more yards. Yeah. So, but all right, we got about 2 minutes left. Let's see what else we can answer before we get out of here. Millie C said, with Dak out multiple weeks, who do I pick up? May, Rodgers, Jones, Lawrence, or Carr? Definitely not Derek Carr. I mean, Anthony would have to look it up. I'm not going to go with Rodgers. My heart says Drake May. Art says Drake May. I mean, he's been good in fantasy. He didn't have a great week last week. Tough defense, but without looking at the schedules, it's probably Drake May in my opinion. He's running a lot. It's Drake May.
For me, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's playing pretty good football right now. He finally looks like he's in tune with Devontae Adams. I mean, we finally get that breakout season from Garrett Wilson. He's playing out of his mind, even and they're coexisting. Aaron Rodgers has multiple games. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games with 2+ touchdown passes. Had 3 this past week in the Houston blowout. And the schedule: Arizona, Indy, bye, and then you got Seattle's tough, but they're not impenetrable. The Rams just showed us that. Miami's going to be a bitch, but that could be a shootout. And then you get Jacksonville, Rams, and Buffalo in the fantasy playoffs. Like, if Rodgers stays healthy, like I think we could see, he's like, I don't know if we get spike weeks, but we're gonna get like those 19 to 22 point weeks out of Aaron Rodgers where he's a plug and play.
Yeah. I'm with you there. Hustle King said that we didn't answer his question, so we focused on the Tucker Craft part. He did say, "Please rate my team." So let's just take a look at it one more time here. He said Josh Allen, St. Brown, Zay, James Cook, Chase Brown. So I think me and Anthony are kind of in lockstep here. We think Chase Brown probably, can be looked at as an RB1, possibly rest of the season with no Zach Moss. Now, does Khalil Herbert get traded? Does he go to the Bengals? I mean, there was talk about maybe Bengals in the offseason. But I think Chase Brown top 15, James Cook top 15. So you're decent at running back. You could be a little bit better there, but you also have Rachaad White. Rico's been solid. Maybe Khalil Herbert goes to the Cowboys. I don't know. St. Brown's this is a good team. You have Jonathan Brooks possibly coming back too. You have Jared Goff as your backup quarterback. If I gave it a rating, I would say it's probably like an A-, B+,
Yeah.
A-.
I would call it an A-. When we're looking at a team where Brian Thomas Jr. is a possible flex play, or maybe he's a starter, that's a really good number 3 wide receiver. Your running backs, Chase Brown is going to explode moving forward. James Cook has been off to his best start. And the crazy thing, like, we were out on Rico Dowdle this week. Rico Dowdle, season high 21 fantasy points, scores another touchdown. Like, in the past, since week 4, Rico Dowdle's over double-digit PPR points in every game and over 19 in 2 out of his past 3. And this guy is going to be a check down machine with Cooper Rush. So I think you're a little bit better than you might think at running back depth.
Yeah. I wanted to note one thing. Out of Rhythm came in here before. I'd have to look this up. He said that CeeDee Lamb averaged 9 targets a game with Cooper Rush. Now, it was only for 37 catches, 492, and 2 touchdowns. That was kind of my thought as well. I thought I remember when Cooper Rush played, he heavily targeted him, but the offense didn't move the ball very well, and it was a lot of volume, but like the volume wasn't giving us a high ceiling. It was giving us a really high floor. But I think that's probably it for us. Anthony's going to do his waiver wire video tomorrow. It drops. We're going to be live tomorrow as well. I'll be dropping my defensive streamers tomorrow. Anthony, what else? You have any plays tonight for the game? Any bets that you like to leave us with?
Yeah, for tonight, DeAndre Hopkins, I think this is going to be his coming out party. He didn't play a lot of snaps. I think he played right around under 25 snaps last week. He's going to be acclimated. This is a great matchup to use him in. I'm going to take his anytime touchdown scorer. And I think I'm going to take Kelsey's anytime touchdown scorer as well, because Tampa's just as bad against the tight ends. They are against wide receivers. And Rachaad White receptions, depending on what your book has. He's had back-to-back games with like 6 or 8 targets. He's going to be a focal point of the passing game. And then I like Cade Otton yards. So they're my 4 main plays tonight.
Okay. Well, you heard it from the man here. Why don't you send us out?
Yeah, we're going to wrap up. Pete just said defensive streamers, waivers, Hawks kicker video, and a lot of clips from tonight's show will be coming out tomorrow. And we'll be live tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern, same time, same place. But for Pete and myself, this is the Face Off Sports Network. We'll see you tomorrow.